He works on the show that precedes ours on Fox Sports Radio. Two pros and a cup of Joe, former Notre Dame quarterback Brady Quinn, part of Big Noon Kickoff. Mark Ingram, Matt Leinart, Urban Meyer, Brady Quinn alongside Rob Stone. The Stoner, they are going to be in Morgantown coming up this weekend, and you can watch it on the Big Noon Kickoff. Great to talk to you again. How's morale, Brady?
Morale's fantastic right now. We're in Morgantown, West Virginia, for the big matchup between Penn State and West Virginia. And Dan, we've never been here before, so this is it's a fun experience for us. Always going to new places, seeing the excitement. With West Virginia, how they played last year. Some of the fans feel like this is probably as good of a team, or at least they're feeling this way going into the season. But as good of a team since Geno Smith and Tavon Austin, and that group really came through Morgantown. So a lot of excitement from the Mountaineers.
Feels like every year at this time we talk about Penn State and we go, okay, are they in the Ohio State, Michigan category? They're in the very good category. Handicap Penn State this year because I know there's going to be a whiteout night and it's going to be great and it's going to be festive. And then at the end of the year, they're 10-2.
No, but the difference with 10-2 this year is 10-2 will get you into the playoffs.
Okay.
With the 12-team playoffs.
Okay.
So, and actually, if you go back through the past decade of the 14 playoff, if it was 12, let's just say hypothetically it was 12 teams, Penn State would have been in 6 times. So I think that narrative probably changes a lot for James Franklin and Penn State as far as just how consistently good they've been, with the exception of facing Ohio State and Michigan. This is the year, though, where I feel like it's going to be different. And for that reason, one, they've got new coordinators on both sides of the ball. Their defense has never been an issue. I think Tom Allen, the former head coach in Indiana, would do a tremendous job. They move some pieces around on defense, too, to kind of fit what they need. But it's more about Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator who comes in from Kansas, extremely creative. Look, they're going to run the football. When you have Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, a running back, those are two of the best in college football. That's the bread and butter. But it's getting the most out of Drew Aller. And if he can do that, I think this guy, he reminds me a lot of Ben Roethlisberger. He's big, he's athletic, he's got a big arm. You just see some inaccuracy here and there, and then the short intermediate throws. Sometimes, he has a hard time creating to make some things happen, but you see flashes of what I'm talking about in regards to Big Ben and some of the similarities. So if he can get that out of him more consistently, I think they're going to be a team that's going to be competing for the Big Ten, probably with Ohio State.
Okay. You have LSU and USC that's sneaky in Vegas. Handicap those two, LSU losing Jaden Daniels, USC losing Caleb Williams.
It's funny, talking to Lincoln Riley this offseason, one of the things he mentioned was how they lose that improvisational skill set that Caleb brings. But, Miller Moss kind of plays more maybe within the system, maybe more what you want from a play caller or a coach. And it led me to think that, moving on from a guy like Caleb Williams, who is a generational talent, but now having a guy in the quarterback spot that maybe is not quite as talented, maybe when they do win, maybe when they do have that success, it feels more of it's a team as opposed to it just being one individual carrying that team. And I got the sense that they feel like they're in a better spot from a team perspective. Obviously, the changes on the defensive staff will be part of that. They hit the portal again to help that group. But I got the sense that this team feels like they're in a better spot than where they were before, where a lot of things were just kind of about Caleb Williams, and all they heard was how bad they were everywhere else besides Caleb Williams. So I think Lincoln Riley feels like he's in a better spot from that standpoint. But again, the transition to the Big Ten is going to be tough. And starting off versus LSU isn't going to help build a lot of momentum because LSU is an extremely talented team. I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to pick up right where Jaden Daniels left off. So now he's not going to have Mike Denbrock there calling plays for him. However, Brian Kelly has been through coaching changes before. He's an extremely successful head coach, so he will be able to right that ship. I'm not sure how this opening game like this will play out. I would lean more towards LSU with some of the talent they have, some of the continuity they have too, compared to some of the changes that you've got at USC with the defense and obviously a new quarterback.
How did we get here with Clemson, where they were in the conversation for national title, and now all of a sudden has Debo, I don't know, it feels like they dropped a little bit here. What are they, 16th in the country, but still they're 12-point underdogs against Georgia. and he doesn't take transfers or NIL or, he's got his principles there. Now it feels like the natives are getting restless here with Dabo.
And there's something to be said for kind of sticking to what you believe your identity is, what you want to kind of create your program around. There's something to be said for that. However, I think everyone would agree you have to adapt with the times if you want to survive and if you want to be considered one of the top teams. And in order to do that, you've got to participate in NIL. You've got to be able to supplement your roster with the transfer portal. I mean, you look at some teams, for example, like Colorado, they're making wholesale changes in the transfer portal. Now, I'm not saying that's the way of doing it. Maybe it is, though. Maybe Coach Prime, after the win last night, maybe they'll prove otherwise, that you could turn over a roster every offseason, if you will. And for the most part, as long as you have a quarterback and a few of the key pieces, you can go win some football games. But they've been really resistant to do that. And I think we've seen it kind of hurt them in some spots where, look, I mean, high school recruiting is not an exact science. So when you're bringing these kids up, you don't know how they're going to develop. You don't know what they're going to turn into 3 or 4 years down the road. So I think that's hurt them a little bit, and not being able to replace some of those spots that they've missed. They've obviously lost some coordinators too. I think that always plays a role in trying to replace good coordinators to come in underneath you. Every head coach has dealt with that. Nick Saban did, but probably more successfully than others. But I think it's just a lack of wanting to adapt with the times and being able to supplement spots where maybe they've missed. And so, look, they've been down, but I mean, not down in the grand scheme of things, just more down to the degree that Dabo, I think, created for himself.
Talking to Brady Quinn, Fox college football analyst. Big noon kickoff in Morgantown coming up this weekend. Coverage starts at 10 a.m. Eastern on Fox. Also, one of the hosts on Two Pros and a Cup of Joe, the show that precedes ours on Fox Sports Radio. Let me start with Shador Sanders. What do you see? I mean, are we talking high first round talent at quarterback?
Yes, I think he's going to compete with Carson Beck for the number 1 overall quarterback. And for these reasons, I think a lot of the conversation about Shador or Colorado and Coach Prime tends to being all the stuff outside of football for the most part, right? When you watch him, first off, he's an incredibly accurate passer. And so that translates no matter what level of football you're playing. The thing that I love about him the most, it's really twofold, and it kind of goes hand in hand. It's his poise and his toughness. I mean, how many times did we see last year and even just last night? He hangs in there, or even he buys time to hang in there until someone separates or gets open, and he delivers a strike and gets blasted. That is something that you cannot coach, you cannot teach. You either have that or you don't. And you can tell he's put on some muscle too this offseason, I think, to prepare himself for that, because let's just be honest, where their offensive line is at, they're probably going to face more of those issues, especially if they're not balanced running the football. But that poise and toughness always gives them a shot. And he is one of the best quarterbacks, and he's got some extremely talented skill players in Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn Jr. So they're going to hang around a lot of games. But I think if he continues on this path and they keep winning football games, I think he's going to be up for the Heisman. He'll be up battling for that number 1 overall spot in the draft. Oh. The interesting thing is going to be is if he gets still the attention for the Heisman, even if the team doesn't win quite as many games, because of the heavy lift that he's got, with that Colorado team.
If you're Travis Hunter, would you gear up to be defensive back or wide receiver in the NFL?
Oh, man. I mean, looking at these wide receiver contracts,
that's what I said. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Brandon Ayuk is frustrated with a 4-year, $120 million contract. Basically, he's all distraught about it. It's like,
but people are going to say, he can play both ways. And I said, you can't, because you got to be in defensive meetings, offensive meetings. Like, you can't be 2 places at one time. Or could he?
I think he could. You figure out a way of the scheduling so you get him caught up to speed on both.
But full time on both sides of the ball? Or
well, maybe not full time. And you're going to have players you rotate out anyways at wide receiver. And so if I was looking at it realistically of how that would work, I think he'd be out there full time as a defensive back, and then a wide receiver, he'd be in probably on 60 to 70% of the plays. And I think that's possible.
Wow. Now
you got to be good about how you hide that, because you can't just throw them in there on plays where they're throwing the football, right? Because every team's going to look at the scouting report and go, "Hey, Travis is in. It's going to be a pass." So you've got to be careful about that. I think he's the type of athlete and rare talent that could. I know there's a lot of people who are going to detract from that and say it's an NFL schedule. He won't be able to take the physicality and the beating. I would love to see him try that. I'd love to at least see him try to see if he could do it.
Could you have played like inside linebacker as well as quarterback? Same time?
I think in my mind, I'd like to think that,
Yeah.
but in reality, most likely not, especially having a brother-in-law who played that position and always, I mean, if you ever notice, like AJ's hands, I used to see this after he'd play games, like he kind of holds them like this because they'd be so mangled. Like he couldn't like break his wrist or everything else. His hands would be all beat up. They looked like, big fish hooks is really what they looked like.
So your brother's AJ Hawk. Did he ever hit you?
Of course, yeah. Fiesta Bowl. He actually, a lot of people don't know this. He actually got me twice. He beat me twice. When we were in sixth grade, we played in a Dayton league. We couldn't find enough teams apparently in Central Ohio, so we had to travel to Dayton every Saturday to go play. And he played for Centerville, and their team beat us in the championship of that back in sixth grade, and obviously they beat us in the Fiesta Bowl as well.
Has he hit you off the field?
No. We every once in a while we'll kind of test each other, kind of like the brotherly hug that evolves into kind of testing to see how he responds to stuff. Like he actually tore his pec, and so every single time I see him and mess with him, I'll kind of poke him where I know he tore his pec, where it kind of hurts him and messes with him a little bit.
I like it.
And then every once in a while I'll act like I'm going to shoot to try to do a takedown or something. But he's got a little crazy in him. Like to be married to my older sister, he's got to be a little. He always says she's crazy, but he's crazy too.
Yeah, but you tried to wrestle Will Ferrell a year ago at this time when we were in Ireland,
and that was a mistake. Looking back on that, I had no idea. By the way, Will looks great for his age. I had no idea his age, and then I realized there could have been a broken hip involved. There could have been a cardiac event, all sorts of things. And I regret that. I apologize. And I think I just got caught up in the moment there in Ireland, which I think we all did, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Yes, that is true. More concerning, Alabama without Saban or Michigan without Harbaugh?
I think it's Alabama without Saban. And it's twofold. The first is if you're Kalen DeBoer, you're a great coach. We've seen his track record so far, but you're replacing the GOAT. And so how do you even go about putting your fingerprints on something that it's not like it needs to be fixed? Like he just decided to hang it up. So now you got to try to find your own spin on it and equate to even a portion of the success that Nick Saban had. And it's incredibly difficult to do. So that in and of itself is hard. And then I think for Kalen DeBoer, looking at what he has, I think Jalen Milroe is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. But if you look at what Kalen DeBoer was doing with Michael Penix for the 2 years he was in Washington, he transformed him from a different player from his time in Indiana, and they threw the football all around the field. I don't know that Jalen Milroe out the gate will be able to do that this year. So how do you go about constructing the offense to play to those strengths? That'll be another one of those challenges. And I think for Michigan, look, we already saw Sharon Moore replace Harbaugh last year. And if I had to ask you what you think the identity of Michigan is this year, it's probably, we're going to say it together, the run game and really salty defense, right? I mean, they had a first-round quarterback last year. And that was still their identity. So that's not going to change, even though Jim Harbaugh's not there.
But can you see Harbaugh try to bring Michigan to the Chargers?
Yeah, he just signed Hassan Haskins. He's literally signing players out there that used to be on his roster. But I think that's also part of what you do as a head coach.
But can you run the football? Can he play Michigan style in the NFL?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, you got to adapt and change a little bit, but go back to the San Francisco teams. I mean, you figured out a way of utilizing Colin Kaepernick to make him effective in the running game. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, going back those years with Frank Gore is incredibly productive and a salty defense. I mean, that's how they built that roster and built that team. And I think he made a statement too when he took Joe Alt, and not because he's a Notre Dame guy, but because that's how they built those teams. If you look at Michigan, and when he probably got there, he looked at it and says, if I'm watching Bama, if I'm watching Georgia, everyone's talking about the trenches. Like we can talk about skill players all we want. When we go every week to see these teams, I can almost assuredly sit there and go, that team's going to win, that team's going to lose. And it's because how they look up front on both sides of the football. Yeah. And I think that's what he's trying to get to. That's why he took a mammoth of a human being in Joe Alt.
Behave down there in Morgantown. You can get in trouble.
I've heard that before. I'm still looking for a little fun. Maybe we can do something with a Mountaineer or something. Get that old musket out there and fire one of those. I've never done
that. Seton went to West Virginia for a little while. Did cameo appearance?
Why a little while? Well, why only a little while? What happened?
What happened?
If you just refer back to that trouble that you get into, we were talking. I took full advantage of that in my tenure there.
Not 10 years, but tenure.
The tenure.
Yeah, tenure there. I mean, it's not
I'm
like,
not judging if it was 10 years, by the way. Not judging.
Did you ever get in trouble at Notre Dame? Like
Not
socially?
Really. Socially, no. There was an incident one time where there's construction near my dorm. I lived in Zom Hall, which, to give you any indication, it's not even a dorm anymore. It was a little bit of a wild dorm, I guess, but we don't pick. We get kind of thrown in there. I had driven on campus, I think it was in the summertime, or maybe it was like maybe just started the season. And it was an area where there was construction. And so there's a gate to get on campus. You can't just like drive on wherever you want. It's really hard to get on. And so they had let me go on because I think I was like dropping people off or something. But the person at the gate told me to drive on a sidewalk area because there's construction. Otherwise, I couldn't get back to the dorm. And I did so. There happened to be like a Notre Dame police officer there. She was not too happy about that. So that became like a big incident where there's like cop cars everywhere. And then all it took was one radio up to the guard gate. And they're like, yeah, sorry about that. I told them you could do that. So that was about the most trouble I got in. But there was like ATVs. There was like 3 cop cars surrounding. Like the dorm was like, everyone's looking outside. And I was like, this looks a lot worse than what actually happened here.
That sounds like a boring college career.
It had to be boring though, man. When you're the quarterback at Notre Dame, and I'm sure Sam Hartman and his hair dealt with this last year. Riley Leonard's dealing with this now. Is you get noticed everywhere. I mean, I remember even like afterwards, like we've been on international trips in Italy or Ireland, and like you've had people randomly just go, "Hey, I remember watching Notre Dame." It's one of those things that kind of it comes with the territory.
All right. Well, have some fun down there. Thanks for joining us as always, Brady.
I'll have a lot of fun. Liner's here, so he likes that.
Liner didn't get cheated in college, though.
No, he did not. He had a great time.
Brady, he should have stayed an extra year at USC.
I mean, think about nowadays. He'd stay like 7 years in college. Like I think everyone would have done that for a while. Huh?
Liner should still be at USC.
He's 40 years old.
Yeah.
We're still playing USC. Yeah.
Thank you, Brady.
Thanks for having me.
Brady Quinn. There in Morgantown, it's Penn State, and in West Virginia, big noon kickoff. Also, he's one of the co-hosts on Two Pros and a Cup of Joe, the show that precedes ours on Fox Sports Radio. We'll come back, update the poll results.